Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome. We are thrilled to be a part of the NAME conference this year. It's the 30th anniversary. And I am Dr. Karen B. Dade. I'm a professor at Western Washington University in the state of Washington. In addition to that, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Multicultural International Development Company. And so I'll be sure to share in the chat any resources along with our particular website on the things that we do from a standpoint of offering curriculum development and education for so many across the world. So the one thing that we want to do before we get started is to just honor, first of all, our founders of NAME and our what we call our Queen Mother of NAME, and that's Rose Duhan Sells. And I want to just give a special shout out to our executive director of NAME, and that her name is Betty Beaver. So Betty, I know you're busy, you're keeping us all together here, and I just want to send a lot of love to you and all of my NAME family. So it's unusual. Yes, it's the first time that we've had to do this and by way of using technology. And I know there are little glitches here and there. So bear with us. But I am super thrilled. You see these two beautiful young ladies that are sitting beside me? They're my granddaughters. And this is Ellie sitting to my right. And this is Addy sitting to my left. Ellie is 13 and Addy is 15. And this summer, just as the COVID was happening and we're here in California and really got involved with Black Lives Matter movement as far as demonstrations and protests, these two were so active in that I decided to begin to make some mini, very short videos on how do we begin to educate, because young people are very socially conscious. And so how do we begin to educate them on why things are the way they are? And that takes going all the way back for us. We are of mixed cultures, but that very much includes our African descent. And so they're going to be learning today. This is going to be kind of like a learning classroom. So I hope that each and every one of you that are out there that are participating, that you feel free to bring in your children, your grandchildren, your partners to come and be a part of this. We've tried to think very creatively on how we would do that using different modalities to make sure that you are able to participate. So we're going to be we'll have a PowerPoint to guide us. We're going to have a couple of videos. In fact, I'm going to try to find some time to make sure that I show you a little bit of the videos that we've done together, because we've done some pretty funny kind of experimental videos. One has to do with similarities and differences. And we do this little experiment from the standpoint of fingerprints. And another has to do with melanin in the skin, and that we all have melanin in the skin, and it's just to certain degrees. So we're going to be talking about that as well. Really just to point out that when we talk about race and racism, that, race is not a biological construct, it's a social one. And we use that social construct then to oppress others on the basis of race. So let us begin. I think I've probably just given sort of the preface to all of this. Girls, do you want to say anything to welcome our participants as we begin?
Hi, I'm Addy. I am really just excited and pleased to be here and talk with you guys. And also, it's a learning experience for me, so I'm really excited.
Thank you, Addy. Ellie, anything?
Hi, I'm Ellie. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here too.
Yeah. And I'm excited for them to be here because, and I'm going to go to my next slide here. And let's see. I know that I'm sharing the screen, and we should be able to advance the screen. And look at who is loving on each other. Now, the reason why I took this picture this summer is because these two are usually like cats and dogs going at each other, but every now and then you'll hear them say, I love you, sister. And that was one of those particular moments. So I really just want to share again with you, my helpers this morning. I actually have 11 grandchildren, actually one on the way. So it's going to be a dozen pretty soon by December. And it's always so much fun to spend time with any of my grandchildren. So thank you to the two of you, Addy and Ellie, for joining me in this sort of family format today, for learning about Africa to America as a holocaust, right? And so it's going to be done through storytelling. We're going to be using a little bit of music and dance. This workshop I've done all over the world. So I've pulled just a little tidbit of a longer video of what the workshop would actually look like if we were all together. We would be dancing together and singing together. And so I've pulled a little bit of that. So patience as we transition, back and forth from video to sharing some pictures and to sharing the PowerPoint and other kinds of things, as well as working together. So some of you may have heard the song that we played originally, and that song with the beautiful drumming that was going on is called Funga Alafia. And Funga Alafia means wishing you welcome. It means welcome, first of all. And it is talking about well-being of the people. And so it's one that I always like to share in beginning the workshop and teaching it through a call and response method. All right. So we're going to be learning that particular song in just a minute. But I want to go to another slide, and I've got my granddaughters, one's on one computer and one's on another computer. And so I always thought that I had shared this photograph with my two granddaughters here. And I know that we've had it at family reunions before, et cetera, and so on. But today I want to have this particular workshop in honor of my great grandmother. And actually my grandfather, but I did not have a picture of him. My great grandparents were enslaved Africans. Sandy McLean, who you see here, mother came over on the slave ships being brought to North America and was settled and auctioned from the Carolinas. And so again, I just humbly stand on the shoulders of those that have come before me. And I want to thank, this is your should be your great, great, great grandmother, right? And so Sandy McLean, and that name in and of itself, that name was a given name. That was not her African name. What happened when the so many African people were brought and forced in chattel slavery from Africa through a middle passage, they were brought to plantations to have to work from sunup to sundown. And they were given the names usually of the so-called master, the owner of the plantation. And so this name, when you hear of McLean, you think about McLean, Virginia. But you should also know that McLean Trucking Company, there are actually businesses that came about long after the slavery period, but we are connected to that name. So I didn't think that you all knew that information. I just wanted to share it. And I want to encourage those of you who are out there, as we're doing this lesson together today, share some of these things, the things that you know about your cultural history and about the history of those of African descent, our ancestors coming to not only the Americas, but throughout the diaspora. So praises to you, great grandmother Sandy. So the first thing that I want to kind of look at right here is I want to talk about Africa. And usually the first time, and I'm going to ask you to what your experience was on this, because the first time I ever saw a Black person in a book in school was when I was in the 5th grade, and that person's was Harriet Tubman. So my first association of, my Black heritage was that of slavery. Do you recall, have they made many changes since then? In the books that you are reading now, are you getting history about before the time of slavery? Are you learning about all the wonderful things that Africa had that brought so many different people there to explore and to begin with trading, but ultimately it turned into something very
Well,
horrible?
for me, middle school, elementary school through middle school, it was really all just like slavery based, nothing really positive about
Mhm.
African Americans.
Mhm.
Just until recently, now I'm in 10th grade and they're starting to, I don't know, like be more aware of just like how they should teach certain things and just really not only describe African Americans as like being slaves, but also just like for example, right now I'm reading this book called Things Fall Apart.
Oh,
And so we're
Chinua
really
Achebe.
yes, we're really
Mhm.
going into like the culture, the music, all of that stuff, which is really just honestly eye-opening for me as well because I've never really like learned about any of that
Yeah.
just until recently. I've only learned about slavery, and I'm glad that we can find some positives in that and teach other people about it.
That's wonderful. And remind the audience what grade you're in,
Yes,
because we're
I'm a
just getting it.
sophomore. I'm in 10th
Okay,
grade.
so that's being a sophomore. So waiting until her sophomore year to really get that exposure. What about you, Ellie? Have you had
Um,
any exposure to what we're going to talk about today?
yeah, a little bit about trade, and
Hmm.
I'm also reading a book called Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry,
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
talking about how they're getting pushed out of their land that they
Yes.
owned, and how they have to like start going to a different town to pay for goods because they keep on taxing them on things that they didn't buy for.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad that you're and let the audience know what grade you're in.
I'm in 8th grade.
Okay, so we have 10th and 8th graders here, and they're saying these things are just coming about for them. And I think I have my PowerPoint up, but I know, Addy, you probably can look, can we do chat, see what's happening in chat for people as well as we're going on? Some folks may have some responses to some of these things. Feel free to share in chat. It's also open for you as a participant. So you can actually share and make comments as well. And we'll be sure to give some invitations for that. So yes, it is so important for us to know that we were an enslaved people when we were brought to this country. And so the things that you shared are very important, but we were something before that. And that's why we're going to talk a little bit about that. So you see the African continent right there, right? Everybody should see that in the PowerPoint that I'm showing right now. What are you noticing, girls, when you look at that? If you look real close to that, it looks a little different. It looks like something's going on there. What do you
All
think? What's the message that we're trying to share there?
well, obviously all of the continents are in one in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So like on the map, Africa is projected to be smaller than all of these continents.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I believe that, I don't know, United States, for
Can you
example,
see?
is bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like United States wants to look like they have more power by being bigger, projecting that they're
Mm-hmm.
bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And they make Africa smaller
Wow, you're
because
getting
they
deep
have
on it.
less power or
Yeah,
whatever. So,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. It's kind of subliminal, and we do a lot of subliminal things to, change our ways of thinking. It's called kind of socializing us to believe certain things. And this is why we're really striving to share the truth about all cultures in the world, right? And I want to say that this particular workshop, we take the position that we are all one race, and that is the human race. We should celebrate our various racial ethnicities and all of our other identities. But again, when we talk about race, that is not a biological construct. It is a social one. It was manufactured to be able to do some of these things, like such as slavery in the world. So I thought it was really important to put that map up. And those of you who are teaching and not even teaching, I mean, just spread the word that there are some maps that are more skewed than others. So I always recommend the Peters map, because the Peters map actually gives you, it elongates Africa in the way that it is. In all of our Southern Hemisphere continents, so when we think about South America as well, much, much larger and more at the center and looking at that. And so that's a truer map. When you're teaching young people about Africa, I would really suggest to try to go for a map that is truer in relation to all of the other continents in the world. So I want to take a minute before we flip to the next screen also, because I said we always just learn about slavery, right? So I want to talk about some things before slavery about Africa. Africa is one of the most richest continents in the world. Especially, I'm going to take you back through using music and storytelling and movement. I'm going to take you back to a West African village, because in West Africa, that's where so many of the Africans, we're talking over 50 million Africans taken out of Africa and forced into chattel slavery. And it's what we call the Middle Passage. And so when we're looking at that, we have to ask ourselves, well, why did that happen? Why were so many people going to Africa, right? And so one of the first things before we get into the resources, did you know that Africa is called the cradle of civilization? And what does that mean? If you're talking about a cradle of civilization, and again, we have our participants on. You can continue our conversations, give feedback as we're talking, give your input into answering some of the things that I'm asking my granddaughter, you know. But so, what do you think that answer is?
The beginning of civilization, because cradles, I mean, represent like babies and the beginning of life.
Yeah,
So
Addy. Mhm.
that's what I think it
Yeah.
means.
And so they call that cradle of civilization because scientists and archaeologists, very long time ago, but it's still, very much so. I haven't heard any dispute that other bones have been found on other continents that are older than the bones that I'm going to talk about. So in Central Africa, they discovered these bones. And these bones were bones of a woman, I might say, I might add, since we believe in woman power here in our family as well. And so these bones are called Lucy. And Lucy, have you ever heard of Lucy before? Okay, so how old do they say Lucy is? She is older than what? She's older than dirt for sure, but do you know? Huh? She is over 1 million years old. And because over 1 million years old, that is telling us that, you know, wow, we can't trace human existence back before then. So it must be that Africa is the cradle of civilization if those first bones were there. And what helps us to understand that further is that we look at the sophistication of Africa way before the pyramids were even built, and that's a couple of thousand of years old. We had societies throughout Africa that not only were they very strong in their oral history, like we're doing today in storytelling. So it would be like my job, because this is what I do for cultural studies. It would be my job to pass down to my grandchildren and great grandchildren and community pass down the information that has been passed down to me. So there's a very strong sense in culture on oral histories. But we also, a lot of people don't think that there were written histories and books in Africa. In universities such as Songay and Timbuktu, lots of information. And so, do you know that mathematics and the creation of language, like when we talk about using phonetics, which was kind of named after the Phoenicians, but the Phoenicians borrowed those language symbols from Africa. Okay, so much of the disciplines that you're learning in school stemmed from the scholarship and work of so many different African people. And that's important to know, because when people say that we are ignorant, our ancestry is I'll just spell the first letter on that, S dot 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 whole.
Okay.
This will help you.
Go ahead. Let me turn this down a little bit.
Okay, and is there someone that would like to
Go ahead.
make a point? I'm hearing someone speaking.
Yeah, but yeah, I got it. Okay, great, thanks. It's
Okay.
hey,
All right, are we good? And would someone like to speak? Okay, so I'll continue. I'm hoping that everyone is hearing me okay, and as well as Addy and Ellie. And again, we're just exploring the resources before we get into um, the period of the African Holocaust. Okay. So you don't hear all these wonderful things about Africa. You don't hear that I wore today what's called a mudcloth print. And in Africa, you see beautiful, beautiful different colors. You see beautiful different weaves, like the kente cloth. Many of them are stamp printed, and many of them tell what culture or groups you come from in Africa. And even the way you have your hair today, girls, if you were wearing it in a certain way, if it was in a braid, we'd be able to tell whether or not, if you were married or single, what your status would be in a particular society. And so not only are we talking now that it's the cradle of civilization, that education was abound throughout Africa. Aristotle, Socrates, even Picasso, from these places, what we would consider in Northern Africa and in Europe in and of itself, people were coming and gathering all of this different wonderful educational information about human life and living and being able to exist. And in addition to that, it was the artistry of storytelling, as we're talking about orating today's lesson. There was dance, there was music. The drums are the heartbeat of Africa. The drums are known to be able, if a person is laid out sick and can't get up whatsoever, if you send 10 drummers into the if you send the 10 drummers into that room, that person is going to be lifted through the vibrations and frequencies of those polyrhythmic drums. And so, we're going to be getting ready to move into the start of our story. Okay. And we're going to start the story with celebration of life. And in this case, when we do this particular workshop, there are, I usually will pick a couple to come in, students usually, and we'll pretend that they have just brought a beautiful baby into the world and that we're celebrating life. Now, we do that in today's society, right? What does it look like in today's society when we celebrate a baby being born?
Baby showers.
Yeah, like a baby shower. And we bring all of these gifts and so on. And so, and actually, the African village where we're at now, and I want everybody to kind of switch gears and use your imagination. Imagination works so very well when we talk about using the arts and just giving us vision. about things in the world and understanding. And so here we are, we're celebrating a newborn baby. We're bringing gifts from all of the village, near and far. And we are singing and praising and saying how wonderful this is for all of us. The drums have called out, there are drums that are called talking drums, all kinds of drums, djembe drums, and they all have different roles to play in drumming. But the talking drum actually sounds out phonetics. It's like you don't even need your cell phone for that. I could tap out that and you could hear me from across the way. And it's like, hey, Addy, Ellie, I need you over here right now. We're getting ready to do such and such and such, right? So imagine that those talking drums are going out um, through the lands right here. All of the nearby villages are hearing that there's a big party that's going to happen. So why are we celebrate? Why don't we celebrate when a child is born?
Well, when a child is born, it's another person added to the family, so the family legacy
Yeah,
just
so
keep on going and going. If the baby has, well, not the baby, but when they get older, has kids, and then their kids have kids, just everything keeps on getting passed down.
Yeah, exactly. And so my hope would be that my grandchildren, since I try to spend lots of time with them in passing down our family histories and passing down things that have happened in the world, passing down our social struggles and social injustices that happen through the world, that they can continue to build on those things and to carry them. So ultimately, I'm hoping for a world of peace and joy. Are you all hoping for that too? I'm so hoping that's going to be, for your generation. So I just want to share this last point. And that point is, again, I want to kind of reiterate, I may have said it early on, is that it is important to spend time with your family members, especially during COVID, if you are quarantining with family members or with friends and partners. This is a time to really share in passing down our legacies as human beings. And I had a friend, Dr. Yvonne Daniel, and she's located right here in Oakland, and her work is on cultural um, dance anthropology. And so through that, she shared with me that every weekend she would call all of her grandchildren together and and their grandmother together, and they would have like a little class, a mini class for them every weekend. They would go over, have Sunday dinner together, and then they would chat, and the history and the legacy would be passed down to all of the family members and the grandchildren. And I think that's very special. I know when I was younger, family used to call all us kids out. I had 10 siblings, and they would call us all out on a Saturday evening to kind of entertain them and their friends, and we'd have all of this sort of a talent show. But I like the idea of sharing the legacy as well. And so, again, it's such a treat for today. So before we move on to the celebration, what we are going to do is I'm going to give you a bit of a video of what that looks like when we're all coming together in celebration and it's being the part of the workshop. Those who heard the song before, Funga Alafia, Ashe, Ashe, would all of you repeat that with me? We're going to do what's called a call and response. That means I will call it out first and then you will repeat it. Okay, so we're first going to say it all together, and I want those of you who are watching to say it along with us. And then we're going to sing it. And remember, it means welcome and wishing everyone well-being. It's to lift us all up today. And we definitely need that in these times, okay? So, Funga Alafeya.
Funga Alafeya.
Let's do it again. Funga Alafeya.
Funga Alafeya.
Ashe, Ashe.
Ashe, Ashe.
Ashe.
Funga Alafeya.
Funga Alafeya.
Ashe, ashe.
Ashe, ashe.
And then the last part, ashe, is just giving blessings, right? And sharing that with one another. So I played some beautiful drumming and they were singing the Fanga Alafia song. But we're going to sing it all together in call and response. And I know that there'll be some delay in some of you who are singing out there with us. And it's okay to overlap. Don't worry if it sounds like it's sort of mushing together. It is from the Spirit. It is from the Spirit that we give great greetings to one another. So we're checking in on chat. Anyone have any questions on chat, Eddie? Okay. So now song-wise, it's going to go Funga alafea.
Funga alafea.
Ashe, ashe.
Ashe, ashe.
Funga alafea.
Funga alafea.
Ashe, ashe.
Ashe, ashe.
So let's do this from the heart. We're going to go like this. We're going to go Funga alafea.
Funga alafea.
Ashe, ashe.
Ashe, ashe.
Funga alafea.
Funga alafea.
Ashe, ashe.
Ashe, ashe.